Welcome back to Vagabond, everybody. And let me just say, in this volume, we kind of really pumped the brakes on this whole thing, didn't we? In more ways than one. All while simultaneously, increasing the momentum of the editing. You know what I mean. In this vizbig edition, we end up basically grinding everything to a complete halt after the battle with the 70 Yoshiokas from the last one that took up basically 2 entire volumes of it. I saw, or at least something like that. But anyway, like I said, in this one, everything grinds to a halt when Musashi wakes up healing from his wounds. Now, we've had this happen before. Musashi's been beat up, he's been hurt, he's had to lay there and heal up before, but this time he's been cut on his leg. Basically, his entire calf muscle has been severed to the point where it's been cut so badly that they don't know if he'll ever walk again, let alone fight. Then, on top of that, while he's down and trying to heal up and recover from his wounds, he's picked up by the authorities and taken off to jail for basically the crimes that he committed by killing all those people in that battle. So now we have even less momentum because he's literally locked in a single room, at least as far as the momentum of his ability to go anywhere or do anything. So now with our main character literally at a standstill, Inoue takes this opportunity to literally just pause everything, kind of meditate for a while and reflect back on Musashi's life. Takuan is going to show up in there as well, and he's going to kind of juxtapose Musashi while comparing them and their lives as they've played out as kind of mirror images and complementing each other over the years, and the way that one chose the life of battle and one chose the life of a monk, and how that kind of works together, and how their lives have kind of evolved together as they've moved through them. And just because he's locked up in a cell and he can't go anywhere and he can't do anything doesn't mean that Inoue can't use this as an opportunity to flex his muscles in terms of editing and intercutting different storylines, because it's crazy how well he can do that. He can add so much momentum to a story and kinetic energy just by taking stationary scenes of people sitting in rooms talking, and just by the way that he's able to intercut the storylines. And if this were a movie, he would probably be winning awards for best editing at this point. It's phenomenal the way that he puts these together, and it's just, like I said, he creates kinetic energy out of thin air. It's very impressive. And this is something that he's been doing this entire manga. I've mentioned it before. This isn't new to this volume, but it feels like he stepped it up in this volume. And I don't know if that's necessarily because he's just after these years of practice and years of getting better at honing his craft, or if he stepped it up a notch in this volume simply because all the other motion has drained from the manga and he upped this to compensate for that. Neither would surprise me. Anyway, meanwhile, as Musashi's locked up in prison or jail or whatever you want to call it, the main storylines that we are intercutting between and jumping between is Musashi, Kojiro, and Otsu, with a little bit of Matahachi over here. Kojiro, of course, is still in that sword sharpener's place that he's been staying at, and a new swordsman shows up and kind of plays the stick game with Kojiro like Musashi did. This guy immediately realizes he's not even on the same level, not even in the same league as Kojiro is, and he will ultimately end up taking Kojiro with him away back to his, I don't know, school, place, something, wherever he's going back to. And essentially he's going to give his position to Kojiro, because why should he even waste his time pretending like he's capable of doing something when there's people, like teaching, I think is what he's doing, or being a head swordsman of some kind. Why would he even waste his time when there's people of Kojiro's caliber out there? He might as well just fucking give up now, right? And then there's Otsu, and she's essentially wrestling with the same exact thing that Musashi is right now, and that is, what does it mean for the future if Musashi really is hurt to the point where he can no longer fight anymore? What does that mean for her future? Does that mean that he's going to have to settle down and stop fighting entirely? And if he does stop fighting entirely and settle down, would that be with her? Then does that mean that her and him have a life or a future that isn't what their current existence is? And if that's the case, is that even what she wants? And surprisingly, the answer to this question that she lands on is no. That isn't what she wants. She really does prefer the way that it is now, even if that means that they can't be together. Also, she has like a series of visions or dreams where she's visited by this dead warrior of the Yoshioka clan, and he's going to walk around and travel with her. I mean, I'm assuming that it's either a vision or a dream, and not that like literal dead spirits and ghosts are haunting Otsu. Although, I guess you could take it that she's very literally being visited by ghosts. Although, to be quite honest, I don't think it matters how you interpret it, if it's some vision or if it's a literal ghost that's speaking to her. That's not the point. And I don't think at any point Inoue really cared how you interpreted this. Because at the end of the day, it's only there to relay a point. And that point is to have the conversation. And the conversation is, let's reflect. Let's reflect on the battle. Let's reflect on the cost of battle. Who ends up paying the cost of battle? And he's going to take her around and he's going to introduce her to these families that have been left behind by the deaths of all these people, these families who no longer have their husbands or their fathers or their breadwinners, that might end up starving afterwards. And whose fault is that? And who is to blame for these people now that could very potentially go hungry? Is it the Yoshioka's fault for picking the fight with Musashi? Is it Musashi's fault for literally killing 70 people and now having 70 families with holes in them, potentially very devastating holes in them? Then that will further evolve into what their agenda is. Do they have one? Are they here for revenge? Do they want him dead? Wish death upon Musashi? And then that evolves into no, they don't, because just by existing, Musashi gives relevance to their death, meaning to their death, because they fought and died and lived for the way of the sword. And if they wished death upon Musashi and achieved that, and he ended up dying, then that monument to the way of the sword, that is Musashi, ceases to exist. Therefore, the importance of the way of the sword ceases to exist. Therefore, there is no purpose to their death or meaning to their death in some way, shape, or form. Or at the very least, it reduces the impact of and the significance of them having sacrificed themselves for this particular ideal that stood so important to them. I mean, this whole volume was completely either reflective or introspective. There's an entire scene where Takuan goes to see that sword sharpener guy, and they have an entire conversation about Musashi versus Kojiro, and are they just wild swords out there in the world, or by the very nature of them existing at the same time, in the same world and in the same realm, by being wild swords themselves, does that inherently make, and by being such kindred spirits to each other, does that inherently make one the sheath to the other's wild sword, so they are simultaneously each other's sheaths? Musashi on the other side of that, this is getting out of control, it feels like, but Musashi on the other side of that is struggling with the idea of purpose. If his purpose has always been to be stronger, to be the strongest, if he ends up being the strongest, but he then loses the ability to use his leg, now he's no longer the strongest. So that was his purpose. So if that's gone, does he then have no purpose in life? What does he do then? Where is his worth and where is his value? And it seemed to be hinted at that just because you can be invincible and be the best and still lose your abilities, but then you still have value and you still have worth, because then you can then move on to basically the level of an instructor and giving your gifts of knowledge to another generation of people. At least that's what seems to be hinted at. But it seems like he ends up ultimately rejecting that. He can't seem to come to terms with it. That's not right. He's not ready for that step. And the volume ultimately ends with him kind of going off by himself, just praying to God that he has the chance to fight again, and the chance to fight at least one more time for everything, and find another opponent that will give their all in the fight, and that he can give his all in the fight too. He's just like, it's like he's not ready to give up yet. And I think Matahachi's going to go back home or something. He shaves off his little scraggly goatee. Anyway, no, this is such a good manga. It just continues to be so good. It continues to be so well written. In a way, has a way of writing everything from the philosophy to the downtime to the way the editing and the intercutting, and the way that he just keeps momentum going even when nothing is happening, and even when it never feels dull, and it never feels dry, and it always feels very introspective and very smart. It feels like this is when a very intelligent and wise person wrote this. I just feel it just feels that way as you're reading it. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to keep this right at the same place that I left the last one, which is just right at an 8. This continues to just be really, really good, strong writing. I don't know if it's good enough to be like 9, 10 area, although that's probably where the manga will end up when it's all said and done. I think the whole package will feel like a 9. Probably. We'll see. But as of this volume, I'm going to say it just feels like it continues to be that real strong, solid 8. That it has been for a minute now, if I remember correctly. I kind of spread these out a little bit. Anyway, as always, everybody, the link for my Patreon's in the description below. The link for my Discord's in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.